Thank you for coming to today's conversation titled Don't Let Your History Kill the Mystery. Life offers us limitless possibilities. How do you respond to your inspirations, ideas, and desires? In this conversation, we will explore how your true nature is limitless by design and how your humanness can get in your way. Our humanness can be so clever that we don't even see the roadblock and how it stops us from taking action on these inspirations. I hope you enjoy the conversation. A lot of my client calls, people feel stagnant, stuck, feel like they want a fresh experience of life and it's not happening. And so oftentimes they're curious about, well, why isn't it happening? Why isn't it happening? I'm doing my part in the doing section. So what often happens is we get inspirations or fresh ideas, and we have very little awareness around what we do with that inspiration or idea when it first lands. So this conversation is to very much kind of open your eyes and clear your lenses to get your ear to the tone and the feeling of inspiration or a fresh idea. Okay? Because when we get the knowing that the essential nature of life is limitless and that you have a choice and you have free will to align to the essential nature of life, which is limitless, which is rich with potential at any moment. If you really look at life, if you really look at life, there's not a limit to the number of trees. There's not a limit to the number of raindrops. There's not a limit to fresh ideas and things that have occurred to you over time. Maybe it's insight, maybe it's ideas. And there's a limitless quality to life that we possess, but we also possess a human conditioned mind, or which is like kind of our humanity. Now, does it feel true that the potential in life is limitless for all people? Does it look like anybody could have a fresh idea at any moment? Anybody and everybody has the potential to see something fresh about a past moment. So that's really universal, and that's one of the things I find so fascinating is that how this intelligence behind life will bring us a fresh idea, fresh inspiration, or even a fresh realization about something we've held to be true for a long time. I find that fascinating. And sometimes when that comes in and you see a reality that you didn't see before, and you didn't ask for it, but you're getting it. So it's kind of like, I know it didn't come from me in the sense of I didn't put any energy in it trying to figure out having a fresh way to see something. But out of the blue, something very fresh came on a topic that I may have been curious about and I may not have been curious about. But when I get that, I do see it differently. I can't not see it differently. And that always surprises me. Now, that looks universal to me in every human being. Nobody had to do anything special. It didn't have to take the right supplements. You didn't have to sit on the cushion right. You didn't have to do anything other than to be a human being and alive. And I think, so for our topic today, if we can kind of take that as a given, the limitless nature of life, so we don't have to, it wouldn't be even useful for me to try to convince you that there's a limitless quality of life, but it would be my invitation for you to take that into consideration and see if you see it for yourself. Just see if you see it for yourself. So, as a baseline foundation that establishes that we all have the capacity to receive fresh ideas and inspirations, new directions for our life. And so, when people talk about they feel stuck or they feel like nothing's happening or they feel like they can't make things happen that they want to happen, um, uh, what can be such a subtle passenger is when we get these inspirations, our history, being our conditioned mind, tends to want to grab that idea or inspiration and determine its viability in the world of form, in the world and in your life. I'll even simplify it, say in your life. So you want to start to get to just notice. You can get the feeling of a fresh idea. You can get really keen to even a tiny drop of a fresh idea. And the invitation I'm putting out there is to, it can kind of come to as you gain awareness, you can get the check in with yourself and your gut and see how it feels when you see something new or when you get a fresh idea or you get an inspiration to do something. So when that happens, do you feel it in your body? Do you feel like a sense of a lilt of hopefulness or a lilt of possibility or, you know, so I want you to really get familiar with that feeling. So it seems like it's all possible in the world. For me, it always feels like the world is opening versus, it's going in this direction, starting to open versus closing in on me. So when you start to just kind of be keenly curious about any fresh feeling, fresh ideas, even a little bit of a one, doesn't have to be a complete download. That's rare. I don't know. It's rare for me. But you can get these little inspirations. And so as you get that feeling of fresh and new and hopeful, I want you to really allow yourself to just be with that feeling of hopefulness. After you do that for a bit and just start to notice that you're kind of putting it out there for all the energies of the universe, so to speak, to know that you're open and receptive to fresh ideas. This is when our humanness starts to come in on the scene. Okay, this is when our personal history starts to come into the scene. Because all of a sudden it goes into doing like a viability study. It goes into kind of cataloging this inspiration with your past history. Well, it hasn't happened yet. Or this was good. I can't see how this could work. I don't know. You're too young. You're too old. You don't have the experience. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's that truly is the number of objections that the human mind can wrap around an inspiration is that too is limitless. If we really start to listen to how many ways that the mind starts to what it does with an inspiration. And there's nothing in the world wrong with it. I just want to have the conversation to become aware that those that feasibility study is very, I'll say, personal and unique to you based on your personal history. Based on your personal history, it's going to have a flavor to it. So you can become more self aware about what your own personal conditioned mind says about any fresh idea. And we can get onto it. We can get onto it. And anytime we can kind of get onto the humanness of our mind, we start to take more things in stride. We start to take the opportunity to play with ideas or take action on an idea. So in that place of how we kind of established a minute ago, the feeling of when you get a fresh inspiration or fresh idea and you kind of get a lilt, kind of get a lift of hopefulness. In the same sense, like if you considered some of these limitations that the human mind puts on it, I want you to get a feeling of that. Because you can go up with the inspiration and down with all the ways that the mind can show possibility or not possibility, just depending on how how favorable your mind is to new ideas and you trying new things and you taking chances. So that another part of that is really getting familiar with the feeling, of just really and with the feeling of it's the opposite of hopefulness. It's the opposite of possibility. You can feel it. You can really sense it in your body. So in that place of playing, and listening and knowing that if the more I can get on to this and kind of this I don't know, this inside commentator about life, and even the notion that maybe a new inspiration is possible or not possible, that kind of shows you how your interior mind will either set up this inspiration and idea as a challenge or as a great adventure. You see what I mean? It's like, because if we realize too that every challenge we experience in life is coming from inside me, it's not coming from the outside world. That everything that looks challenging about life is coming from me. That's one of the greatest things that I think can be learned is like anything I see challenging is coming from me. And in my own intoxication in the mystery of life, I've always thought that the challenges were just in the nature of life and it's coming at me. And what am I going to do with these challenges that are coming at me? So if you can establish that baseline that any challenge you see with new inspirations and fresh ideas is only coming from you, that helps you to see where you're not standing in truth. And it's so intoxicating. To me, it's the greatest intoxication in the world that it looks like life is challenging and something's happening to me. And I think we'll go through that the rest of our life, kind of going, because we're flooded with feelings. So it always feels like the outside world is coming at me with something. So first and foremost is like any challenge you see is going to be coming from you innocently, completely innocently. It's oh so innocent. And then that the nature of life is limitless in that you're going to always have the possibilities for inspiration and fresh ideas. Now, we've kind of established that part about the feeling of it. Another kind of clue you can play with in this game is with our conditioned mind, we live in kind of a two worlds of you can be curious about these inspirations and ideas, or you can see how the mind can take it over and think there's something certain to be had here. To me, I think there's a game of certainty and curiosity. Certainty and curiosity. How can you look away from certainty? Because I don't know about you guys, but I don't see where anything is certain in life. maybe gravity so far, but it's a pretty short list of what's certain. Maybe the you know principles of materials like the boiling point of water or gravity or the tensile strength of properties in the but I don't see much else certain in life. But that's another thing to become aware of and get onto, that the conditioned mind plays in certainties. Like it's sure it won't work. It's not for you. What's the point? It's a waste of time. What are you going to do with it if you get it? You see? I think that is so funny. So in that place of play with curious or certain, which one feels better? And all of us have a desire to be right, but good luck with that, there. And our righteousness, it might feel great for a moment, but there's no certainty in being righteous either. But the human mind, or the egoic mind, whatever you want to call it, it wants to be certain, it wants to be right, it wants to be able to forecast, it wants to see. And it's not playing with the principles of materials like gravity and the boiling point of water. It's like that's as close to certain as I can see. And I think too, with the current world, we're going to have new ideas come. We're going to have to really receive the ideas that come to us. And I say receive those inspirations or ideas as contributions, And call me crazy, but I feel like even if it's to plant a garden, that's contribution. If it is to write a poem, if it is to bake a meal for a neighbor, if it is spay or neuter a neighborhood cat. I mean, just whatever it might be for you. I think these contributions are like these ideas and inspirations so that the mind will take as no, that's not the direction we're looking at. That's not the point of what we're doing. We're here to accomplish X, and that would look like a deviate off of that path of this straight line the mind wants us to go to. But in this place of the mystery of engaging with the inspirations that come and really embracing those ideas and inspirations, it's going to look mysterious, like it doesn't make sense. It's not pointing to whatever the outcome is your mind has decided, or even the inspiration that you have. But to play with this mystery of inspirations and play with this, I'll say the mystery of not knowing, which I think it feels exciting in the not knowing. Used to scare me to death in the not knowing with a death grip on life. It's like somehow I really was under the belief I needed to know. And if I examined enough possibilities of what could go wrong, I could cover all the bases and I would be safe and I wouldn't get duped and I'd be ahead of the curve. And it would all work out because I considered every possibility that could go wrong. But there's no engaging with the inspiration in that. It's a lot of mental gyration with the inspiration or the idea, but it's no engagement with the inspiration or idea. It's no taking action on the inspiration or idea. And the invitation is to just take action on these inspirations and ideas, no matter what they are. Because I totally believe what needs to happen in this world. I totally believe a little extra kindness wouldn't hurt, a little extra beauty wouldn't hurt, a little extra compassion wouldn't hurt. And so what if that comes to you from planting a garden? What if that comes to you from making a meal for a neighbor? All of that stuff is, to me, is going to be jet fuel to fund what's next. But don't let the mind tell you that's you're off track, you're off the point, you're missing the point. So when you act on these inspirations in any small way, planting a tomato, planting a plant, whatever it might be, any small way, you're funding that inspiration. You're funding living in a better feeling. You're funding opening your life to much more. I love that word funding because it feels like you really are acting on your own behalf without needing to know the outcome, because you can't know the outcome. But the more you'll let yourself play with this mystery and get less concerned about certainty, it's going to be a lot more fun. A lot more fun. So does anybody hear anything in that so far that you might have a curiosity or a question about? Even it's about the feeling, even just checking the gut feeling of inspiration, the feeling of inspiration and the feeling of limitation. I really think that's such a great, because the mind can play tricks on us in the sense of that it really kind of paints a picture of what's possible. But the feeling of it, if it feels like a doggy downer, I would encourage you to consider that that's coming from the conditioned mind, from the history, you know. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, "Oh, I've always wanted to paint, but I wasn't the artist in the family." You know, somehow the mindset of the family or the mindset of the individual is painted a picture that there was space for one. You know, there was a space for one brilliant mind in the family. There was space for one brilliant creative in the family. And so they resolved themselves to something that was less than inspirational because it was so believable. It was so believable. Whatever their contribution was less of a contribution to life than whoever got the recognition for what they were doing. But as you kind of move through this game of life, and this is just kind of how it looks to me, you're only in relationship with yourself. You are only in relationship with yourself when it comes to following inspirations, following ideas. That the primary relationship that you need to cultivate is you with you before you need to consider anybody else's input on your inspiration. Does that feel true? We tend to be a pretty harsh gatekeeper to our own inspirations.
Hey, Cherie.
Yes. Hey, Kathleen.
Hey, I love what you're saying. The little piece about action, and then what you said about, you're only in relationship with yourself. Now, right now, my greatest call toward creativity is in speaking and writing.
Mm-hmm.
And I will feels like I follow the inspiration and then the mind comes up when I start getting into action. I also wonder if I am really not stepping into that very next step, just like seeing the big picture. Mm-hmm. And instead of, I'm kind of understanding a little more about creating is just that one little next step, and you don't know what the step after that is going to be.
You can't. That's the part about following inspirations, Kathleen, that I think is so helpful. Is like you can't get a next step until you take a first step,
Yeah.
and
And I
then
somewhere I start getting stuck because I'm trying to see the end result, and I'm looking for this. And then also, I want to help other people. So I get a little muddled up with that because I start thinking about, well, what's really going to help versus like, what am I really inspired to share?
gosh, that's such a good point. That is such a good point, Kathleen. And two of the points that I'd really like to zoom in on what you said was when we get this inspiration and we're really kind of drawn to take action on it, if we can get on to the fact that my mind gets stirred up about taking action on something, that it just you just notice. It used to happen like when I was trying to do a website. I would say, "Oh, let me play with colors and lay it out." But when it came to content, woof, this tornado of thought would come up, and I would go, "It needs to say," just like you said, I need. What am I going to say? I need to either say what the audience wants to hear, like you always hear that part about write to your audience, or there's a right thing to say to communicate what I want to communicate. And I would just notice that this almost a mushroom cloud of thinking starts in just considering that. And I'll call it, it was a hot topic for me because I didn't write from I wouldn't I was so in my head about writing, I wasn't in my heart about writing. And that was what the big difference was. That was the big difference. Of number one is to get onto the fact that you can notice there are certain things that we get inspired to do that our mind gets real busy on. And if you notice, it gets real busy on there's a right and a wrong to doing this. You see, and the right and the wrong would tie you back to the part of the conditioned mind that always plays with certainty. So that would be a great place to know I'll say our mind because you and me, I'll put us together on that one. Our minds get busy when we go to engage in something we're drawn to do. Then when we kind of sit down and start to freeze, we notice that the flavor of the mind is there's a certainty of a right and a wrong. Now, what I love to do with the practice of mind is I kind of have to not let myself get up. Not let myself get up and just play the game of if I'm going to write, it's like, all right, really, what would I want to share from my heart? Regardless if no one else in the world wants to read it. I think it comes back to personal expression about really what matters to you and to share from that place. Because I think each one of us longs to be more fully expressed. And the mind makes it conditional about, well, what will people want to hear? And it's like, well, maybe that's all well and good, but I haven't found that to be helpful to my own creative process. In my own creative process, it's been like, what if I could just give myself permission to be vulnerable and share what's alive for me? If it falls flat, it falls flat. If I don't know how to communicate it, so what? So just to come back to Kathleen, does that make that sense about? Can you kind of see how that plays out? How you can just get really busy with following an inspiration.
Yes. I was thinking when you were talking about just sitting there, and completing the writing. And, for me, it, I would get stuck in that right or wrong. To me, it looked like it's got to be good enough. So I would say to myself, okay, let's do a shitty first draft. Let's do C- work. And, I hate editing and revising and all that. And sometimes depending on what the writing or the video was for, maybe C- work is good enough.
I think it's brilliant. Why? Because you're putting something out there.
Yeah. And then the other thing I do that kind of gets me stuck is I have like ideaphoria. I get inspired and then it's just like
Oh.
I feel overwhelmed with, well, it could be this and it could be that. And so where do I take that first step? It all seems, it all seems juicy.
I say just pick anyone.
Yeah.
Just pick one to play with.
Okay.
And what tends to I don't know if this is helpful or not, but what I tend to do is if I see one something and it's got my attention, it just occurs to me, it's like, okay, what would I want to what would I want to share on that? Might be three things. I'll do bullets, three little things. And then it would be like what really matters to me about this? What matters
Yeah.
to me?
I will say that, I feel like I've really blocked my creativity because I don't know that I very often allow myself to say what's in my heart and doesn't matter if it
Yes.
helps somebody or what somebody else thinks. I just think there's been very, very few times that I've ever really created from that place. And I'm excited
Yes.
about giving myself permission to do that.
I think that would be such a fun experiment, Kathleen. I think that'd be so fun. I mean, to really, to just really state why something matters to you
Yes.
in your writing, and knowing that everybody has an opinion on everything. And
Sure.
I don't know, I feel like it's for me when I started doing that, it was like, because I had such a heebie-jeebies about rejection. I couldn't take another rejection, and then it was like, oh my gosh, if I don't claim my seat at the table to even have an opinion, what am I standing on? I'm not even honoring what matters to me in my heart.
Oh my gosh, yes. I don't know if anybody else on the call feels like that, but yeah, like all the ways we don't claim our seat at the table. And that's, not, I mean, that's for us, but I just feel like everybody needs to do that.
What does it hurt? I mean, really, it's like what could it hurt? It can't hurt anything, and I feel like it really allows our hearts to blossom. It allows ourselves to more fully inhabit our life. It allows ourselves permission to play with all aspects of life that are either um, waking us up or resonating with us or enlivening our life, I think I've always been so fascinated by how many people don't require permission to do something. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't, I that was permission. I think is one of my primary things in life about, I, I
Yeah.
didn't know.
Is there a permission pill or vitamin we can take?
I love that. I love that, a permission pill. But that's kind of what it feels like. It's like
Yeah.
everybody else is taking their seat at the table. Everybody else
Or
is
yeah, like I
stating an
didn't get that.
opinion and not looking
I didn't.
back. But so anybody with a project and inspiration, I love what Kathleen has brought up about just kind of noticing what your mind does with it. And then noticing that if your engagement with it, noticing like the mind tries to put certainties on it or put a right and a wrong on it. That to me is like pushing the right and the wrong to the side is where permission can rise. pushing right and wrong to the side. Because, oh my goodness, anything in that the right and wrong is going to be from history. It's going to be from learned. It's going to be working off of historic data. It's not, I mean, it's not in the spiritual realms where anything is possible, where everything's invited to play. How does that sound to anybody out there?
Well, I'll jump in.
Please, please.
We have a saying in our house, which is when one of us says, "You think I could do that?" The other one says, "You can do whatever you want." When did that become a problem? No matter what it could be, making a meal. It's like, when was that a problem? And the more that I've practiced that with Robert, the more I say it to myself.
Yes.
Like, why not?
Oh my gosh.
And yesterday I gave myself permission to he wanted to do this whole thing with his car when he leaves town, and we should go get it and blah, blah, blah. And I said, "Robert, can't you leave it in the parking lot for 10 days? Well, and then he had some whatever. And finally, all I did was, thought, this is not about him. I said, I don't want to spend my time doing that. Ever. Unless it's an emergency. And it was like, just really, really a huge opening. And I love those openings because they are a feeling, without a doubt. It's a feeling throughout my entire body. And more, that's how I plan to live.
Mm-hmm.
I used to find excuses for saying no. In fact, when I told him that, he said, "Well, I guess we should have a t-shirt that just says no." And I said, "Well, actually, it should say no is a complete sentence." And it's like, but I used to try to go up and down with all of that. It's like, I'm done.
I just think that the t-shirt is in, when did that become a problem? And it's like, oh my gosh. Once again, it all originates from inside us. When did that become a challenge? Oh, it all starts inside me. Mm-hmm. The problem starts inside me. The challenge starts inside me. And it's like, oh my gosh, to me, that is such leverage in the world, that everything that I see, if I see it as challenging, there's an opportunity for me to see something else about it. Because if it's not a challenge for every person on the planet,
right,
I could expand my mindset on that. There's something else for me to see. If it's not behaving like gravity, there's something else for me to see. So I can come back to being curious versus certain.
Yes.
And not feel threatened with the curiosity. There's no threat to being curious.
No. That's one of the most exciting things in life, I think. I mean, that's just, that and insights. I could live on that forever. It's like,
oh my gosh. I had one this week, and it just was like, how did I never see that? Just how did I never see that? And it was on something that had been in my life, I'll say 40 plus years. And I was like, to me, it's gobsmackingly awe-inspiring, that how many times I'm wrong about stuff, and being wrong's not a problem. It just shows me that I'm not seeing something. I'm not wrong. I'm just not seeing something.
Right. Correct. There's no right or wrong about it.
No right or wrong about it.
No.
Oh, I love that. When did that become a problem? That would be me. When did that become a challenge? Oh, that would be me too. Okay, when did it? Oh, okay, that would be me too. It's like innocently taking responsibility for every experience you're having. It's like, whew. What Wouldn't that be Miss America's speech for world peace? I'm going to take responsibility for what I'm seeing in life, you know. World peace would now begin.
They talk about that kind of stuff.
They talk about that stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh,
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that. Thank you for that, Susan. That is rich. That is rich. But once again, it just plays with curious uncertainty and right and wrong lives in the mind. It's like if we just could get that right and wrong lives in a human mind. It doesn't live in
right. Yes. It's
the energies of life, you know, or the spiritual realms or whatever you want to call it, you know, that there's, you know, like a North Pole and a South Pole. There's nothing right or wrong about that. They just two sides of something.
well, it doesn't live outside me.
No.
And I heard Linda say the other day, I never had thought about the word insight really. And she said, she was talking with a client and she said, well, it's a sight from within. And I'm like, I never heard that. And that I just thought was brilliant. It isn't coming from out here. It's coming from within me through whatever channel that is. And that is empowering.
And it's a fact.
Yeah.
I mean, if you did want something certain in life, to me, that's a fact that if my heart is beating, whatever the energy is that my heart is beating is carrying the energy of this intelligence that could give me the opportunity to see something I haven't seen before, a sight from within. I'm like, and if my heart's not beating, none of it matters.
Not on that level anyway.
That, you know. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But I think we've never taught that, you know, we're never taught to really trust, gosh, trust the depths of our being, you know, we just, I don't know. I just think so much of the culture, so much of the human experience is based in fear and am I safe and will I be safe in the future and will I be safe in the next 5 minutes, you know, or maybe that was just my experience, but it seems like it shows up a lot in my client conversations, you know.
And will I be safe after I die?
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes. And what's that little journey going to be like? You know what I mean? From here to goodbye. I don't know. But what if none of that's a problem? What, like you said, when did that become a problem? I love that. I love that. So in the place of ideas and insights, and I'll say even living more fully expressed, is to, I think, get enamored with the mysterious qualities of life, or I'll say mysterious in maybe even stating it in a way of saying what's not known versus the unknown, you know, like even stepping into the unknown can sound ominous and booga booga like a haunted house, but it's like really orienting to what I don't know, what's not known. And that, to me, that has a feeling of it's okay to be curious. Not knowing is not a problem. Like you said, when did that become a problem? That I don't know what's going to happen the next 5 minutes. It's, well, nobody does. Oh gosh, how did I get the idea I should know what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes or in the next 6 months, you know?
I used to think I did.
Oh my God, if I was smart enough, good enough, wise enough, I'd know. It's like, no. It's like, gosh, it is a human incapability to know what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes. But that's not a problem that I don't know. And that I'm going to be okay no matter what. Whatever that is.
Yep.
Yeah, love that. So any other questions or anything? I'm just so grateful for you guys coming to the conversation today.
So Cherie, do you ever get what you might sort of call audacious ideas and inspiration?
Oh, sure. Oh my gosh, yes.
And so that would be where the mind certainly would get quite busy, right? And go, oh, but surely you're not up to that. Or I mean, I'm talking about myself here.
Oh, you could be talking about me too. It's like, oh my God, you couldn't do that. You couldn't do that.
Yeah. Like, oh, who would?
If I told somebody about that, they'd go, why on earth would you spend X amount of money on that? Or why on earth would you go to the trouble for that? It's like, well, it just helped me realize I didn't need to share my inspirations with anybody. I just needed to be in relationship with them between me and my inspirations and just say yes to them.
Yeah. I'm thinking more in terms of an audacious idea that involves engaging with other people on a creative project, for example.
Yeah.
Where, you know, I'm perhaps not at the same level in terms of you know, audience stuff, and yeah, you think, hey, just go for it. Still, like you said, treat it as an adventure rather than a challenge or something to overcome.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think even that place, Corinne, is so interesting that even in the mind, it establishes a hierarchy of wisdom and knowledge. You know, or that the number of, I'll say, followers has some sort of correlation to the value of their message. All humanity, just let it all be humanity playing with humanity.
And I think, actually thinking, as you were saying, because I was thinking, well, there seems to be a rule that, going by the marketing, that's, you know, somebody who has a huge following is not going to want to talk to someone with a very small following, because what's in it for them. But if you've got an idea and inspiration that's come from the heart and it's super exciting, they're going to be like, oh yeah, you know, they might feel the energy of it and want to play anyway.
They might, and again, they might not.
Or not. Yeah.
And it might not, but it doesn't have anything to do with the value of the inspiration.
Yeah, and not acting on it is just killing it right there. Whereas taking one little step might be like, oh, okay, no, actually, I could try that instead. So that might not happen to work out, but then there's this alternative, as opposed to what I tend to do is go, oh no, forget it, you can't do that. That's too much.
Totally. Or that I love playing that game of, I mean, really, I've got nothing to lose by playing this out. I have nothing to lose by playing this out.
Yeah, and that's where challenge takes on a different twist. It's like a positive challenge, like, hey, can I make this happen, as opposed to, this is challenging, it's difficult, I'm too hard. It's part of the game then, doesn't it?
Yeah. And do I have the guts to follow the inspiration that comes to me? See, I think we tend to poo-poo on the inspirations that come to us, thinking they get better inspirations than me.
That's true. Yeah.
You know, it's like, no, do I have the guts to follow this that occurred to me? This that occurred to me. And it might occur to 100 other people on the planet, but this is occurring to me and it lights me up.
Honor it. Yeah.
Honor it. Play with it. Play with it. Get on the dance floor with it, you know?
Yeah.
And if it's, you know, a 2-song dance, then it's gonna send you in the next route of inspiration. You see what I mean? So even the mind will start to make up, well, you didn't finish that, or you dropped the ball on that, or you didn't go to the end of that. It's like, no. Engage with it until it moves in the direction it wants to move.
Yeah. And talking about music, that reminds me of something which I find so inspirational, which is, you know, Bob Geldof back in the 90s.
Sure.
80s, he followed inspiration, the Band-Aid, that like big concert that he put on. Now, in that point in time, that was logistically looking like it could be impossible, but he didn't stop, did he? He just went for it. And that, to me, is always a reminder, go for it, because you just never know what you can pull off.
You don't. In that anything, Like, even if you think about Bohemian Rhapsody, you know, they were not making any money until the dark horse got on the stage, and then the money flows in. It's like, you don't know what's going to happen in the next instant.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good.
And even if it so-called didn't blossom into changing the world, the beauty is that you played with it. To me, that's where if there's success, it's just like the permission to play with what comes to you, and not let your conditioned mind just kill what wants to come through you. I kind of feel like we get tapped on the shoulder, and it's like, okay, I'll tap you on the shoulder and see if you want to play with this, and I'll tap you on the shoulder and see if you want to play with this. What the heck, you know? I like that idea. So, you know, just play with it. If you had nothing to lose and there's no separation and no difference, it's just a human being following an inspiration. Isn't that level the playing field? That, gosh, wouldn't you want anybody in the world to follow an inspiration? Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you all. Thank you.
Can I say just one thing?
I'd love it. You bet.
Well, in that conversation, what I was hearing was the key is to not have a preconceived idea of where that inspiration is going to go.
You can't.
That's the only thing that stops me, because if I have an idea, well, it'll never make it there. That can stop. But if I don't have any idea and I don't talk to people who I know are going to go, what? I'm just moving ahead. That's it.
Yeah. And to me, just listen for your next marching orders. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where's the next thing that occurs to you? The next thing that occurs to you? Or what are you drawn
Trust
to?
the process. Just trust the process. It's like, yes.
Thank you for listening to this conversation on not letting your history kill the mystery that life might be inviting you to engage with. I hope you found some good points, some ideas, and just something to consider. We always appreciate your participation in these conversations. If you found this conversation to be helpful, I invite you to share it with a friend. I appreciate that very much. Thank you for listening.